Before starting any MSB product repair, there are a few crucial tips to keep in mind. When touching any circuit boards or electrical components, it is always best to touch the chassis of the product first or use an ESD safe work surface or grounding bracelet to prevent any electrostatic discharge from harming the product. It is important to keep track of all hardware throughout the build process to prevent any loose hardware from getting left inside the unit. Also, keep in mind that there is a variety of hardware used in each product. Some products use soft nylon screws to prevent unwanted electrical connections. These screws are delicate and can cross-thread very easily. Other products have crucial heat-sensitive devices. If over-tightened, they can crack and shorten the life of the product. Pay careful attention to what type of hardware is being used and how it is being used when disassembling your product. Start with flipping the unit over onto a padded surface. Then use a No. 1 Phillips to remove the 11 440 screws in the corners of the lid. You can remove the lid by flipping the unit over and letting it fall into your hand, or using a pointed object to lift it by one of the holes in the corners. To remove either of the transformers, use a 3/16 Allen driver to remove the appropriate 1/4-20 bolt and washer. Then, unplug the matching transformer connections. The white connectors can be removed by pinching the release tab on the side. The black ones require you to squeeze both ends of the connector to unplug them. Once unplugged, you can lift the transformer out of the chassis. Before replacing any transformer, make sure that the mu metal shield is in the pocket before placing the rubber dampening pad, followed by the transformer. Push the black connector down until you hear a sharp click from both latches. The white connector will also click when fully inserted. Using a 3/16 Allen, replace the 1/4-20 bolt and washer to hold the transformer in place. To remove the front control board or replace the button, start by unplugging the ribbon cable. Use a No. 1 Phillips to remove the 2 440 screws on either side of the front pocket. Then use a 5/16 wrench to loosen the lock nut at the back of the board by roughly a 1/4 turn before backing the nylon screw out by hand. Now you can lift the board up and out of the pocket. If you need to replace the button at the front of the unit, you can do so at this point. Replace the display board in the correct orientation before hand tightening the nylon screw to hold it in place. Adjust the tension of the nylon screw to achieve a crisp button click. Then use a 5/16 wrench to tighten the lock nut to lock the nylon screw in place. Use a No. 1 Phillips to replace the 2 440 screws on either side of the front control pocket. And then reconnect the display cable in the orientation shown. When replacing the motherboard, use a No. 1 Phillips to remove the 3 440 board screws and washers on the top of the small DC power connector board. Once removed, you can unplug it from the connector and pull it out of the jack panel. Then use a No. 2 Phillips to remove the 632 screw from the blue standby transformer. Now use a 1/4-inch socket to remove the 440 standoff located next to the standby transformer. Use a No. 1 Phillips to remove the 7 440 board screws and washers from around the edge of the motherboard. Use a No. 2 Phillips to remove the 632 screw from the grounding lug. Remove the ribbon cable from the front control board. Then disconnect all 4 of the transformer connectors. The black ones require you to squeeze both ends of the connector to unplug them. The white connectors can be removed by pinching the release tab on the side. Use a 1/4-inch socket to remove the green 632 ground screw. Use a 3/32 Allen driver to remove the 440 device screws. Be sure to not leave any lock washers behind. Use a number 2 Phillips to remove the two 632 screws from the IEC connector located on the jack panel. Now you should be able to lift the board up and out of the product by clearing the connectors from the jack panel and avoiding the nylon screw at the front of the unit. Before replacing the board, use non-conductive, non-silicone thermal compound to cover the 4 devices located on the bottom of the board. It only requires a small amount. Too much thermal paste is not good for thermal conductivity. Now you can place the board in the chassis by guiding the connectors into the jack panel before laying it completely flat. Start by using a number 2 Phillips to replace the two 632 screws on either side of the IEC connector to pull the board into alignment. Use a number 1 Phillips to replace the 7 440 board screws and washers around the edge of the motherboard. Reconnect all 4 of the transformer leads. Push the black connectors down until you hear a sharp click from the latches. Do the same for both of the white connectors. Tidy up the transformer leads before using a number 2 Phillips to replace the 632 screw and washer that connects the white wire to the grounding lug. Use a number 2 Phillips to replace the 632 screw and washer in the center of the blue standby transformer. Use a 1/4 inch socket to fasten the ground wire with the green 632 ground screw. Use a 1/4 inch socket to replace the 440 standoff located next to the blue standby transformer. Do not over-tighten this fastener, it can strip the threads out of the chassis. Use a 3/32 Allen driver to replace the 4 440 device screws and lock washers. Do not over-tighten these screws. They just need to be tight enough to flatten the lock washer and push the device against the chassis. Replace the small DC connector board by guiding it into the jack panel and then seating the connector at the back. Then use a number 1 Phillips to replace the 3 440 board screws and washers around the board. Replace the ribbon cable at the front of the product in the following orientation. Now you can reinstall the cover. As you install the cover, watch the controls at the front edge of the unit and make sure to guide them through the openings along the front edge of the cover. Use a number 1 Phillips to secure the cover with the 11 440 screws. It is always best to start in opposite corners to help align the lid properly. Now you are ready to place the unit back into your system.